It's been a while since I've done, I've done some talking on a live stream on various stuff. I wouldn't call it LT, but I'm calling LT. This is an actual LT episode. Quick little update. The selfie stick that I got, I'll show later on better. This is something that I got from the thrift store, used. I'm going to pull you guys in just a bit. One moment. I want to check something really quickly, so it might disappear for a second. We're back. All right. I was just double checking to make sure you guys can hear me, because the cars around are pretty loud. I can't plug a microphone into my phone, but I just went back into my video app and did a second test and listened to the short clip I recorded. You guys can hear me pretty good. If we can't, then I'll just redo this whole video. But it's doing a really good job of picking up my voice. And about the selfie stick, it's one that's got a little rivet, whatever, a little divot in it, so you can't go upside down. Anyways, I am speaking pretty loud too, which I think that helps. So, UFOs. Yeah. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about UFOs in the past, and, but I just never did. And then recently, Fran Lab did some videos on UFOs. One of them was a few months ago, and one was more recently. One was about how they're real, and there's been like reports from, government, like the Air Force, I think, and Navy, some other stuff. And then the second video was about an actual report that they released, because in the big huge bill about like the relief package, there was some clauses about them having to release reports about these things. And so talk a little bit about that. Before we talk about those things, first of all, there's been Roswell and lots of other UFO things. And this was probably a year ago when I was still working at Sweet Burrito. I went to my manager, really great guy, and because I had this crazy idea that is actually not as good of an idea as I thought it was. And I think it was Roosevelt, but it could have been Kennedy. But there was some president that has said the only way the world would ever unite, and this is not exact quote, but the only way the world would ever unite is if there was an alien invasion. So I said to my manager, kind of joking, but you know, also if this would work, it could maybe be a serious good idea. Except for what my manager said. I said, hey, what if we just pay Tesla to fake an invasion, and then the world unites, world peace? Which, the quote from the president, and according to my manager, this is all about the New World Order. And they wanted to, some of these invasions and stuff that were previous UFO sightings, he believes, there's some evidence to believe that maybe they wanted to make it look like there was, hey, one watching, they wanted to make it look like there was an invasion so that you would have New World Order. And the New World Order isn't a good thing, because it's one order over the whole world, one government, and a lot of freedoms are going to be taken away and stuff. So that's not good. And I mean, not that Tesla could fake an invasion anyways, but you know, that's one thing to think about. So, but you know, a lot of those were fake. They've been debunked. And so then going around to 2010, we had lots of videos of people claiming to have seen UFO sightings, and it was just like fuzzy black pixels moving around a blue sky. So not very compelling video. Like, that would be extremely easy for me to fake if I wanted to. And I get that not everybody could fake those types of clips, but they're really easy and simple, and I think anybody who spent just a little bit of time could do that. Like, if you think about your very basic green screen video editing technique, just look up how to do a green screen. There's a free program that can do it, I'm sure. If not, there is a free program. I forget what it's called now, but I know there's something out there. And then just a little bit, so maybe you guys can hear me a little better. So you've got that. Just make a black dot in MS Paint or the program if it supports that, and then just like move things around on your screen, on the scene. It'd be extremely easy to fake the go back out, the UFO footage from 2010. So that for me was one thing indicating that those clips were most likely faked and not real. And so but another thing, this thing was the thing that really bothered me. Okay, you have all of these different supposed UFO sightings happening all over the place. There were tons of clips going around YouTube around 2010 about this. Look, and with all of these UFO sightings, you mean to tell me that not one single person had a good camera with a good zoom lens on it? Maybe a travel zoom, like the camera that I keep in there, the Sony HX99. You know, no one had that. There was one that was like some UFO thing that happened at a sports event. I don't know if they ever identified it or not. And there was one guy who had a good DSLR, but it wasn't fitted with a zoom lens. He had a wide angle lens on his, so he wasn't able to get good video of it. And it's like, so, no, really? No one? Now, I recognize that even if we did have a good zoom, we might not get the detail that we want, because whenever I'm using my camera zooming in on an airplane or something, a lot of times, like, you guys see where the sun is up there, the airplane's between me and the sun, and so I'm shooting the dark side of it. And, guy was doing a wheelie, too bad I couldn't show you. So you have, what am I thinking? Yeah. And so, like, well, it might be possible that I could go into manual settings and I could try and expose my shot for the darkness. It's flying through the air. You don't have time. You got to pull it out, put your camera on auto, zoom in, and snap the shot. And hopefully everything is set to auto focus and all that stuff. Otherwise, you might not get it, because it's oftentimes you're not preparing for it. And so I think the same thing with these UFO things might happen if we were to actually, getting a little toasty, I'll take this off. If we were to actually try and capture good, high quality footage with a good camera just from random locations, but still, nobody had a good, high quality camera when those 2010 UFO sightings were happening. There's even a meme about it. It was by the, I don't know if I'm saying it right, the Eby family, or maybe it's Ebby, I don't know. But like, you got the dad there and his friend there, and they're like, wow, a UFO. And the friend pulls out his his iPad to record it, and he's like, no way, I got this. And the dad pulls out like a MacBook or something and uses the camera on the monitor to record the video. So, funny joke, but I don't know, it bothered me that there was no good cameras around when these UFOs were there. And then, you know, there are some videos where they were obviously special effects, but they looked nicer. It was a UFO from some movie. You can see some of that too. That one I'm thinking of wasn't specifically faking it. But, so yeah, now, going forward, we have actually had confirmed sightings with UFOs. And there's a very important thing. We need to, UFO stands for unidentified flying object. The biggest, most common thing that we associate it with is the disc-shaped spacecraft where green men from Mars come out of it, or some other type of aliens. It's all associated with aliens now, but it really means unidentified flying object. Or there was a joke in, I forget what it was called, but there was this show that I watched a few times on the Utah Education Network about like American history, and it talked about different time periods, the Revolutionary War. It talked about Columbus coming over, and they made a joke that when he came over, the Indians saw a real UFO, an unidentified floating object. which would have been the sailing ship that Columbus was on. But, so, identifying that, then, you know, obviously whatever's been seen doesn't necessarily have to be aliens. It could very well be a, what's the word? Well, it could be from a foreign government. It could be some other, anyone watching, it could be some other phenomenon from, we don't know what, some sort of natural light phenomenon. So the channel Cran Lab, when she was talking about this, she said that there was, like, it could be, what's the word? Oh, she was talking about how it could be something from another dimension poking into ours. So, like, maybe a fifth dimensional object poking into our third dimension, and that's why they flash off and on and we only see part of it. Because you talked about how, like, there's the, I had maybe heard this once before but didn't remember, but she mentioned this, I think it's called the second, I forget what the actual thing is called, but it's like where you have a two-dimensional world and you poke in through it. So, hold on one second here. Okay, I'm gonna put you guys, so, a little bit tilty. So you got a two-dimensional world. If I poke down into that two-dimensional world and I look around, I'm gonna magically appear and the two-dimensional beings will only see me in their two-dimensional plane, but I will just magically appear and then disappear because I'm from a third dimension where they can't comprehend or see. And so, I don't know, she had some very interesting thoughts. I'm going to have the videos linked down below in the description after this stream. But, you know, those are very good points. And I really like how she took a look at it from a scientific thing. And so they could be, you know, foreign government testing secret weapons. They could be, oh, what else? It could be a natural phenomenon. She didn't mention this in her thing, but I've talked with my family about these, and like from what I heard from my stepdad, from all the stuff that he's read, they look like Tic Tacs that are very big, bigger than a jet, about the same size actually, and they're spinning around. Another point from Fran's video that I want to mention, which ties back to an earlier point, how come nobody had a good camera, all the footage that we have so far is from equipment that's been designed to capture very specific things, like the radar and the tracking equipment. They don't have a good, like, high quality camera on those things. And so, you know, they are like working, they probably are working to get that equipment on there, and they will eventually have that so that we can get like high, good 4K footage of these UFOs. I think that's exciting. But, so now where I was going, everyone seems to think of these as possibly some kind of a craft or a weapon. So either it's transporting aliens to and from one place, or it's a drone that's robotically controlled, computer controlled, it's spying on us. It's doing all kinds of things. Got a cute little, yeah, you can't see him, there's a dog back there. Anyways, you know, it could be any number of those things. Yeah, it could, but one thing that I haven't heard anybody say yet, which I think is a possibility, what if it's an actual living organism that does something, that exists in that state? It's gonna be, it's weird, it's different. We obviously don't have other organisms like that we know of, but what if it is that? I think of the very first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. They had this, there was this, it's the first one where Q makes his appearance, so how annoying. But they had this one guy who was claiming that their planet could make, that he could magically make this big city perfect for the Federation and their needs, an outpost really. And what it ended up being was that he didn't have like great manufacturing power and stuff. He was forcing this one alien to shapeshift into the form of that city and make stuff for them with its special abilities. And then this other alien comes up, or no, it's another spaceship. It looks just like your regular flying saucer from older stuff, which I thought was cool. I loved that. I love when more modern sci-fi things harken back to the older science fiction tropes and stuff like that. But then it turned out that wasn't really a spaceship. It was some jellyfish-like thing that could change its form. I don't remember if they ever gave a name for these things, if they ever really explained them beyond that. So, but you know, that's kind of the concept I'm going for. So like these UFOs that we're seeing, they could very well be some life form that exists. And you know, I was trying to think of a good example, although I don't really know what a good example would be. I was thinking, like, if you were an ant and you saw a bird, ants probably have some idea of what birds are. They know they're dangerous, but imagine being very small and seeing something much bigger that is obviously some sort of a life, well, that is a life form, but you know, we don't know it is. Maybe a jellyfish, because from Star Trek, I don't know. If we were really tiny and we saw a giant jellyfish and we had never seen one before, would we know that it was living? There are obvious signs, we could probably figure it out. And so maybe there are enough signs that these are craft of some kind, but they could just as easily be an alien being of some kind. Not like a computer intelligence. I'm not gonna like, or maybe not, well, alien in the sense that they're foreign to us. Hey, we got a comment. Someone says hello. It's a stream about UFOs. So I'm going to continue on where I was talking about, and you'll be able to go back and watch this from the beginning to catch what you missed. But so right now I'm talking about how I think that these UFOs that have been proven sighted by the government, by the Navy and the Air Force, they could be some sort of a living being, not a craft, as I think most people are taking them to be, or some sort of a weapon. It could be a living organism, you know? We don't really know at this point, so maybe there's enough data to support evidence that this is some sort of a craft carrying sentient beings, or this is some sort of a remote-controlled vehicle being operated by sentient beings, but it's not itself a living organism. But I mean, if we're going along the lines of some Star Trek stuff, maybe it's a living organism that is in of itself a spacecraft. Star Trek The Next Generation had an episode on that. So we don't really know what it is. one second, I'm gonna see this comment. I subscribed to you because you did a Neverhead stream. Cool, thanks for subscribing. So, I'm gonna move on and try and hopefully wrap this up because I don't have much more to say. But so that there's possibilities for all of those things. Now, another thing too, like, a lot of people question whether aliens are real. Do they exist? I want to say, like, yes, they do. And for these points I'm about to say, like, I don't have references locked away in my head, but if anyone is actually interested, I will go and let me know in the comments, either during the stream or afterwards, and I will go find the appropriate references for these and put them in the description if people are interested. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we believe that God created more than just this world. Moses was able to see some of these other worlds, not necessarily what was on them, but he got to see that they exist. And there are some other incidences I'm forgetting where that they do exist. And I remember in seminary we learned that a person can only be as good as they are bad, or only as bad as they are good. That's a better way of saying it. That to me was a little tough to wrap my head around. Here we got a comment. What if the spacecraft is being operated by Neverhoodians? NASA proved that the Neverhood exists as a world. I don't remember when they proved that, but that's a cool theory. I mean, man, if Neverhood was real, I would love that. And I'll have to look that up. I think it's mostly just a joke, but I don't know. I will be, I'm curious about that myself. So, and so the interesting thing about what I was saying is, for me, it's a little tough to wrap my head around, because, like, think of some really bad people in the world that have done some absolutely terrible things, names that I don't want to mention here because we're not specifically about those people. Okay, World War II. I'm going to say that much. Think about a lot of evil people from then and the other people. It's hard for me to imagine them being really, really good at any point to be that evil. But supposedly, and maybe it's not necessarily the individual. I think my seminary teacher did say individual people, but he also said for the world. The world can only be as bad, or only as it is good. And so ultimately that means, like, within my religion, we believe Jesus Christ was real. He atoned for our sins. He died on the cross, and we crucified him. And there are lots of other worlds out there. And so, therefore, our world is the worst because we crucified Jesus. My teacher said none of the other worlds would have crucified Jesus, but ours did. But, so you think, oh wow, that's really horrible. That makes us look bad. Well, but remember, you can only be as bad as you are good. So not only do we have some of the worst that would crucify Jesus, we also have the best of the best at some point in our world. But as a religious person, I do believe that there are other worlds. And this was maybe a year ago when I was working at Sweeto Burrito. My manager was talking with another person, and these two guys like to talk about conspiracy theories a little bit. Don't know if I know that person. Couldn't see them well. But, and I'm not saying this is 100% true, because, well, it's not. I'll explain why, but it's an interesting thought. So they were saying the reason that we haven't ever seen aliens yet is because if beings just like us, or any beings, came from another world, it would be the thing where, hey, you're the planet that Jesus was supposed to be from. And then, because we have these beings obviously from another world, it would take all faith out of it, because they know about Jesus and they're not from Earth, and they know that our planet was supposed to have Jesus. So all faith would go out the window, which actually it wouldn't. People would still need to believe them and believe that it's true that they're from another planet, and you would need to believe that there's God exists, and so there would still be faith needed for some aspects of things. Which, this reminds me, I want to interject here really quickly. There was I once watched a video about proof that other dimensions exist in other timelines, and there was one incident where, like, this guy was going through the airport, and he showed them his passport, and it wasn't valid, and he got angry, and he's like, I do live there. And he said where he lives, where he was going to, and they said, oh, that doesn't exist. And he looked on a map. This is where, why is it not there? It wasn't there. And then it ended up being that, like, they had to put him in holding for a while to find out where he's from, make sure he wasn't some kind of a spy or terrorist or something, and he disappeared magically, and we don't know what happened to him. So that was an interesting thing that I once heard. But so yeah, I do believe that other planets exist, and because God made them, personally I also believe they're going to be like us. So if an alien, which means someone not from Earth, if they ever did come to Earth and were ever to come among us, I don't think that it would be noticeable that they were actually different, other than like that one guy where he was from a different place, obviously, because where he was claiming he was from wasn't on our map. So, like, it would be like these aliens would look just like you and me for the most part, maybe a little different, maybe not, they could be from any race that we have here on Earth. And so, but I think they would blend in really well, aside from the fact that, they might, like, talk about places that we don't know about, that don't exist on Earth. Or maybe they have some cultural differences that, obviously are foreign to us. We'd be like, they're obviously not acting normal. They don't know what's up with that. So they would appear different. You could tell that they weren't from the area. Kind of like how someone who's not from Utah might seem a little different because they do things differently. It'd be the same thing, but on a larger scale, maybe. Or maybe they would know enough about us that would be it. And they would blend in really well. And I know that could go down the spooky conspiracy theory. Oh no, aliens could take us over easy. They're not going to, okay? And we haven't met beings from other worlds as far as we know yet. Oh, also, another way we could tell if they're aliens is if God decided to tell us so. And he said, hey, these are my children from another world. Be nice to them, or whatever he would say. But I think there's good reasons why we haven't met beings from other worlds. Aside from... what am I thinking of? Aside from the... aside from what my manager at my old job said, I think there were other reasons. I think we're not meant to meet these beings from these other worlds just yet. And I'm sure we will meet them as God's children when the second coming happens, or sometime after that. Because, also we believe, and this is something that a lot of other people hate, but we believe that eventually if we live righteously enough, we can become as God and be a God and make our own worlds. So anyways, yeah, I do think that beings from other worlds exist, and maybe these UFOs that we're seeing are from these other worlds. And maybe I'm not entirely right in that there's a reason we haven't met beings from other worlds, and it's just like technological advancement and God's not necessarily stopping it. But another point too, and this is something that I realized. There was a book I was writing a long time ago that I haven't finished, but the rest of the book's up here pretty much. I know so I just need to read again what I've already written, and then I can go about finishing it. And let's see. So, not quite yet. I've got just a little bit more to go, and then the stream will be coming to a close. So, with these beings from other worlds, well, what was I talking about? So I was writing a story, and I'm not going to spoil too much. I will say the story's called The Virus, and, there ends up being... there ends up being aliens in this story, other beings, but ultimately in the story, God is kind of in control, and that's a point that I kind of emphasize. And so, if aliens did exist, there is no way that they could thwart any plan of God's. He is almighty, all-powerful, and so if aliens did ever come by, if they ever did visit us, we would still be in some capacity safe as long as we live righteously enough. Now we're getting really noisy section, so I'll pull you guys in. So, alright, I'm going to sit down, finish up my thoughts, and then get on with what I'm out here for. So, yeah, they could very well be... We would be safe if something did happen and aliens did come to visit us. God would protect us, and there would be, no issues there. Really, it would, because He is in control, and that's what I kind of put into my book. And also, as I was doing that, and I was writing God into this story, then I felt kind of sad, because that means it works out great in the end, right? Because God's in there, so it has to. Actually, no, not necessarily, because great is subjective. We'll walk this way a bit because we got a leaf blower coming. So you have this, I realize, what we want and what God wants are very different things. And so ultimately, it could be a thing where what we want doesn't happen and things don't seem great, but they do work out towards God's plan in the end. And for those who live righteous, it will be good for them. It might not happen exactly like they want. It might have rained on a picnic you were going to have with your friends. That's the example I like to use. It might have done that, but it still worked out in the end where you were exalted for living righteously. That could happen. And so, like using aliens example, it could be that aliens come and take a page out of Star Trek Enterprise. They blow up part of Manhattan or something and decimate part of the earth and cause problems. And then, so that could happen. Well, not very likely, but if that did happen, it's not necessarily, oh, God didn't stop the aliens, he's not real. We all have our agency. The aliens have their agency. So it just doesn't mean that things happen poorly. It means that things didn't happen the way that we wanted to, but they'll still happen according to his plan. There will still be a second coming of Jesus Christ. So, final thing that I'm going to say, and then again, if you want any, if anybody's actually interested, I can get you some references to some of the religious stuff that I've mentioned. But the final thing that I want to say, this is an idea that I've had for a story that it could fit within multiple different stories that I've had or that I've been working on. And I don't know that I'm ever going to actually write this story. If I do, it'll probably be a short. I mean, my stories are never short. They always balloon out longer than I plan them to, but I have fun writing them. But this story idea that I've had is, because we believe in our church that there are different worlds, different beings exist. And so we believe that, God had lots of brothers and sisters, and the ones that were righteous got to become gods just like we do. He went through an earth-like experience just like we have, and it was a test to prove whether he was righteous or not. So the story idea goes that you have, we're going to call him Grandpa God, because he's God's father. So he's Grandpa God, and of course our God was righteous, and he got to become a god and make other worlds. One of his brothers, they had a Jesus in their world and everything, and he atoned for their sins and all that. And one of their brothers just barely made it to being a god. And so God says, look, you can become a god, but you still have a little bit to learn. So there's going to be some restrictions. You can make a world, you can populate it with beings, but you won't have the ability to know where someone is at all times, and you won't be able to and you won't be able to keep someone somewhere until you learn certain things. So he gets to become a god. He becomes a god. He makes a world, and of course a similar thing happens to our world, where he needs a savior, so someone to be his Jesus person steps in. Maybe their name isn't Jesus in that world, but you have a Jesus figure, and then you have a devil figure who will tempt people and do all the things our devil does. And so, of course, he exiles this devil to this one dark place, never to leave. But, of course, he can't keep him there until he learns these final things. And so he has to have this... this network of angels that report to him and let him know what's going on, because he can't just, I see everything and know where everyone is because of that restriction. So then in the story, his devil gets pretty smart and figures out a way to sneak past his angels and get past them and fly around in space from the hell place that he was put into over there. And instead of going to the world that his God had created and, wreaking havoc there, because God would find out pretty soon, instead, he comes to our world. And so, because he's now over here in our world, then he starts working with our devil, which our devil's still bound and stuck under a lot of rules, because our God has a tight leash on him. So he can still do stuff, but he has limitations. But this other devil, he doesn't have limitations on him because he's not from our world, and our God isn't allowed to do anything about it. And Grandpa God says, hey, and Grandpa God has said that you can't mess with the beings from other worlds. So then essentially it becomes our hero's job to find out how to notify the other god that his devil has gotten loose and come to our earth. And our god, again, can't step in, so it's up to the people. And the story would end happy. They would eventually get a hold of the other god, and he would say, oh, looks like I need to fix my network of angels that report to me, and there's a problem. And he then is able to, you know, go here, pick him up with his hand, or snap his fingers and send him back, and then work really hard to keep him there. And in the process of bringing him back home, he has finally learned enough that he gets all of the powers of a god granted to him, and so now his Satan is under a tight leash, there to stay forever in his world. That's just a story idea that I've had that kind of relates to this. And so that's pretty much it for my stream on UFOs. It will be very interesting to see the scientific data that is actually collected over time. Because the final thing I'll end with is, in the report, I like how Fran said this, but basically the report that the government has released on UFOs is basically saying that there's nothing new to report on these, nothing exciting. We haven't learned any breakthrough, revelational things. And Fran gets a lot more scientific with this stuff in talking about UFOs. So I'm going to put her links to her videos in the description below right as I end this stream. And anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. There's my thoughts on UFOs. And again, if you want more information, links to the religious stuff, like I can find the verses in Moses and a few things like that, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll put those in the description for you guys. I'm not saying everyone has to believe this, it's just so you want to see where my references are. I'll see you guys in whatever's next.